Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How's everyone doing today?
Great.
All right. Gratitudes, victories for the day?
I have gratitude.
Okay.
Was there something you need for me?
No.
Okay.
She's just giving you a look like,
All right.
you better say something or
Yeah.
this better be good is all I could say.
Better be good, oh my gosh. I'm actually really grateful. I was just thinking about this year I've had a lot more opportunities to help people. And that's something I was, not just as clients, but just like overall, just help more people. And I'm just grateful those have been presented to me so I can help.
That's awesome. And what you're doing allows you to do it too. So good job on your efforts this year. Good job. Taylor.
I'm grateful for music, different kinds, like if you're working out, but especially the Last of the Mohicans that you just played. I've always loved that song.
But you were saying to stop it.
No, I said good job, not stop.
Oh, I thought you said get up. Let's get going.
No, I was like, that's a good song.
Okay.
I'm not telling you what to do.
He's like, I'm done writing, get up.
Yeah.
He has said that before, by the way. It wouldn't be the first time he said that to me. Yeah, I agree. That's good. Thanks for bringing that up. Anyone else?
I'll share a little. Kind of on the same lines with what Matt said is you don't realize how much of an effect you can have on someone until you do something. Like sometimes we do, like, I like to do a lot of charity things, but I don't like to mention it because I feel like good deeds should be, not mentioned or want credit for or things like that. But when people call you after the fact saying that, what you do really helps out so much and you're really missed because of this. Like I volunteered everything, but I wasn't able to be there because of my mom. And they're like, you do so much, everybody was missing you and the impact that you have. We serve at the VOA for underprivileged children, especially during this time of year where they don't have meals and they kind of sleep in the center together. And so us getting together and being able to serve food, like I wasn't able to be present, but I sent a few people and we sent a whole bunch of food. And we do that, my family does that usually. And it really made me miss my dad and everything, but it also made me realize what I do have in my life. Yeah. And then you become very grateful. Especially because they don't know where their next meal is coming from. And it makes me really sad.
Yeah.
But it's really great that we have those opportunities.
Thank you for sharing that and doing those things because it makes a huge difference. So thank you for that. This week, I don't think we have any more classes this week, just normal, regular week. Today, we're going to go over some script stuff. We're actually going to talk about the pre-qual.
All right.
Pre-qualification. So, out of all the things that we do to work to get our mindset right, this is one of those that can ruin your mindset the fastest in this business. There you go, Phil. Why would I say that? Why could this ruin? I mean, we work so hard to build our mindset up so that we can do this job. Because 80% of sales is in our mind. Okay, 10% is who we talk to, 10% is the words we say. Why is the pre-qualification the one that could ruin it the fastest?
Well, it could go both ways. And I'll try to make this super short, but when I first started calling FSBOs, I was so proud that I got the appointment. Like I didn't want to pre-qual them because I'm like, well, what if they cancel on me or whatever? So I just go out. But then you do that enough and it ruins your confidence. So I started pre-calling like 100%. And if they didn't say yes or whatever, all of them, I wouldn't go. And then I'm like, okay, let's find a happy medium here,
Yeah. Yeah. Have you ever purposely pre-qualified somebody because you just didn't really want to go on the appointment? You're like, I got something else going on. You're like, I'm gonna see. You're like finding a reason not to go, and then you convince yourself based on the pre-qual. Yeah. So it has a lot of different things. So both sides is a great point. It can be a tool that helps us strengthen our mindset, not going out on appointments we shouldn't be going on them, and it also could hurt us in the sense that we could make ourselves not go on appointments we should have gone on. Okay, so that's why I want to go through this today, because every one of these questions has a reason for why we ask it. And so as we go through this, let's talk about these questions and see if there's any reservation why I don't want to say this, or any experiences with why this is a good thing to say. Let's bring those out. So we have a small group today, so we can, I'm okay with multiple comments about something if you have that experience, okay? So let's look at this right here. Before I come out, there are a number of questions I need to ask you. When do you guys pre-qualify? Matt, when do you pre-qualify?
Usually right after I set the appointment is the best time.
Okay.
You're already on the phone with them.
So regardless of when the appointment is set, you like to do it right then?
I mean, I wouldn't say regardless, but it's like my ideal scenario is I set an appointment and I am attending it the next day or the day after that, and I pre-qualify right after I set the appointment.
Perfect. What if it's 2 days later? Is that still your...
If it's 2 days out, I'll still pre-qualify that time. But like,
okay.
If I feel like I need to look at the price, and that's a huge concern, like I think they're way overpriced, then I'll want to look at comps and before I pre-qualify. And if it's too far out, like more than 2 days out, then I'll pre-qualify later.
Okay,
yeah.
I like that. What else do you guys do? When do you guys pre-qualify? Or do we pre-qualify?
I always do it the morning of.
Morning up?
Of the appointment, yeah. I mean, ideally, if you're calling, you can get it that night. That's ideal. But if it's like the next day or like Pat said, 2 days later, I do it the morning of, just because so much can change in between. Like if I catch you in a really good mood and we have a great conversation and everything goes well, I set the appointment, and then they come home and fight with their spouse or like something changed, or they have plans that the wife didn't tell them about or something.
Right. Yeah, I like that. That's a great point. Okay, so is there anything wrong with pre-qualifying more than once?
No.
Okay, why not?
I wouldn't say that I go through the exact same questions, but I think that it's very powerful to pre-qualify. There's like something called the law of diminishing intent. You ever heard of that before? It's like basically
explain it for
yeah,
no one though.
Yeah, I'll explain it for you, Jason. Don't worry.
I appreciate that.
You know, yes,
please, thank you.
I'm just kidding. I
love you, man.
Yeah. So the law of diminishing intent basically is like if they intended to set the appointment with you, they liked what you had to say enough to schedule a time with you, right? And if the longer you go away from that point in time when they set the appointment with you, that intent will decrease. You know, it's kind of like when you hear a coach say something, you're like, oh my gosh, I got to do that, and then you don't implement that within 24 hours. It's pretty much not going to happen. You know, like you have a 24-hour window to implement that, or you're going to lose the idea of why that was so important, or just forget about it. And so you could set a great appointment and somebody could feel great about you, and a day or two later you call and pre-qualify them and they forgot what you said that was so special, and then you go into the question, if what I say makes sense, and like, I don't even remember who you are, and I talked to 6 other agents that I hate, and so they may be associated with one of the agents they hated. So anyways, pre-qualify, answer your question to pre-qualify, and then pre-qualify like the day of. And my version of a second pre-qualification is like, hey, did you get my packet? Did you review it? Do you have any other questions? Are you going to be there today at 5:30? Is that still going to work for you? And then just make sure that nothing else has changed, and then before I go out.
Yeah, I love it. Great explanation of that. And as you move through it, that's what you bring up as a really good point, is if I ask these questions today and then 2 days later I repeat and I ask a lot of these same questions, it does a lot for us. Okay, one, they might not remember anyway because of what you were saying that we asked them, or they've talked to 50 different people and they don't know who you talked to, so you're reconnecting at that point. But then it could also bring out the truth. If you talk to an amiable, and an amiable will set an appointment with you on the spot because they don't want to say no to you, but then as you start asking questions down the line, you're going to find that they stop talking to you, or they'll answer them the way that you want to know. Great.
Do you believe this list is the only questions we should ever ask in a pre-qual?
No.
No, I don't. What do you guys think?
No.
The reason I bring that up is Chris Voss says that people have become so aware that to get the information they want from a salesperson, they become masters at giving the counterfeit yes. And he has additional questions that we may feel we need to ask also. maybe inserted in between these, similar to the listing presentation. Like Mike Ferry could ask 100 questions, giving his sample listing presentation on stage.
Yeah.
That I think it's important to remember that this may not be the end-all list to have to ask them.
Exactly, and as they answer it, it might bring up other questions that you want to
Sure.
dive deeper into.
Yeah, and to second that, I'd say there's a couple questions that I think need to be asked every time that are on this. You know, like, you know, are all the decision makers going to be there? It's not
Yeah.
on this script. You know, and something else that I like to ask after, you know, are you planning on interviewing other agents? I ask, how will you determine, or how will you know which agent's the right agent
Yeah.
for you, or you know, something to that degree. I'll ask, you know, how are you going to make that decision?
Yeah, and let's go through these, and I want you to bring up the ones that you add in there, and any
Yeah.
one that you guys add in. Just let's talk about those, because there's reasons that we can do that. I mean, obviously, if your pre-qualification is a 35-minute conversation, you might want to shorten down some of the questions. I mean, the questions are really designed, if your appointment is questions, you're going to have a lot more success at the appointment. So it's not that we need to ask every single question. What we're trying to figure out is there a need for me to be there? If there's a need for me to be there, then I'm going. And once I find out what that need is, the presentation is all about those needs and solving those questions.
And I just wanted to add to that when you're,
Go ahead.
when you're pre-qualifying again, it's
Mhm.
also confirming, you look even more professional, and you're reminding them that how important this is for what everything they've shared with you already.
Yeah, the awkwardness of this is more in us than in them.
Yeah.
Lindsay.
So your standard pre-qual should only be at maximum 7 minutes.
Yeah.
If you're going over that,
Mhm.
you are literally doing the presentation on the phone.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the rule of thumb, right? Like if you're going more than 7 minutes, you're probably asking too many questions.
Great point. Thank you for
And
bringing that
not
up.
leaving enough for the actual presentation of it.
Absolutely. So let's go through these. So number one, if what I say makes sense, you feel comfortable and confident I can sell your home, or you plan to list your home with me when I come out on whatever date it is. Any problems with that question? Do we use it?
I like using it. It
Mhm.
sets a motivation. Like, no, I don't even know what you're doing. So then that's when you can go into more questions. A lot of times they'll say, well, I don't know yet. I don't know. I don't
Right.
know you. I don't know what you do. And I don't want to be commissioned. Or some of the objections can come out right then, or you can wait till the question. So that's an important question right there.
Yeah, and a lot of times the ones that I find that we're uncomfortable with asking this is when we set the appointment just to set the appointment, and it's more like a preview, when the intention isn't actually set. Like, I am going out there to talk to you about listing your home, versus I'm coming out there to preview your home, I've got buyers I'm working with, and that's their intention. They're like, oh, he's coming out to look at the home. Sometimes we do that with for sale by owners, and they think, oh, you're just going to come out and look at my home. I mean, Taylor, how many times have you gone out and they've said that you've talked to the client and they're like, well, they just come over and they don't even have clients with them. We talked about this last week, where you were talking to a for sale by owner and they said, oh, all these agents have been coming over my house, but they haven't brought any buyers with them.
A lot, yeah.
Right? Why is that?
They set a preview and they think it's an appointment.
Yeah. So we said preview, we think it's an appointment. So that's a great question for that. Anything to add on that question? Number two, are you planning to interview more than one agent for the job of selling your home? Why do we want to know this?
I want to know when the other
You know what you're up against. I like it.
I want to know when the other agent's going to be there so that I can get out there before them.
Okay, so you want to see if you can get out there before then. Okay?
Do
I
you
like
want to
that.
go before or after?
What would you like to do?
Depends on the agent.
It depends on the agent. It depends on the agent you're going against.
Yeah.
For me, it depends on your own personal mindset. Like, where do you want to be?
Okay.
If you're going out against somebody who is an analytical and you know they're interviewing multiple agents, and no matter what you say, they're going to interview multiple agents, I want to be last. If I know I'm going out against an amiable or a driver who's going to make a decision quickly, I want to go out first. So it depends on, for me, it just depends on the person I'm going after, because if they're going to sign before they see all of them, I want to be first. But if they're not going to, I would rather be last. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now, the other thing, one strategy that I've used is if I do set the first appointment and I know they want to interview multiple agents after me and they will not sign with me at that point, I will set up a follow-up at the end of it to answer any of the questions, because I'll be at a big disadvantage if I don't sign it on the first appointment, because the next agent will say, well, what did that agent say that they do? And then they just answer it like this. I do those things and so much more. Let me talk to you about these other things that they didn't talk to you about. They probably don't do these things. In fact, we had an agent in our office last year lost out on a listing. When they found out about it, the client said, well, they have an international market that they can market to. Do we have that?
Yes.
They just didn't talk about it. So if you would have said, you talked to them afterwards and said, oh, you got an international market? So do we. That's what we do. Makes sense? So yes, before, after, I think it just more depends on your mindset. And then right here, this is where I throw in this question. How will you know if you found the right agent? So if they say, yeah, we're going to interview other agents, I don't care whether they are or they're not. I would plan on them interviewing other agents. Typically when someone says they're not interviewing other agents, I find that they still are interviewing other agents. So I would plan to compete. I've run into that a few times with family members where I thought it was a slam dunk, where I was like, yep, they're having me come over. So I go in casually, and then after I do a casual presentation with them, they're like, okay, well, we want to talk to one other agent. I'm like, ah, dang it, I should have done my presentation the way I planned it.
I have 3 really important questions for you.
Yes, now let's start over. Exactly. Yeah, I'm sure you guys have never had that problem. That's just me, but that has happened, yes. So that's where I'll ask, how will you find no? And that's just if they say yes. Number 3, tell me again, where are you moving to? So this one I find is not being asked in the pre-qual, because the assumption is, well, I just set the appointment. I just asked them where they're moving to. So you can say, they're moving to St. George. I already know that, so why should I ask that question? Why should I ask that again?
I think just to bring up their motivation of where they want to go.
Yeah.
Remind them like, oh, this is our end goal, is to get here.
Yeah, their end goal, right? And if they know they've already said it, what could they possibly do? They've already know, all right, I told them to St. George. What might they say?
More specific.
More specific, right? They might start giving you some more details. This right here, this question is the motivation question.
I think it reminds them they have a problem.
Yeah.
They need to get somewhere.
They need to get somewhere. George talks about it all the time. If you don't know where your destination is, you can't go anywhere confidently, right? If their destination is, I'm going to St. George, and you don't know why they're going to St. George and what the purpose is for them doing that, you don't have a strong case to keep pushing them, right? Okay, and maybe they might come back and not have a good reason to move, and that might be a reason that you'll look at it and say, okay, they don't have a strong reason to move, and they're $30,000 over what I think they should sell it for. Probably not worth my time, but they're $30,000 over what I think they should sell it for, but they need to move. That changes my perspective of, yeah, I'm still going to go out even though they want to overprice it because they have to move. They just need to understand the market. 2 different scenarios. So we really want to dig deep. So I write next to this one, just dig deep. Understand that. How soon do you want to be there? This will give you a time frame. Number 5, when I see you, how much do you want to list your home for? How many of you have actually got numbers there?
I get it all the time.
Okay. Do you ask this question even when you're talking to a for sale owner?
Yeah.
Okay. What are you getting typically? Just their list price that they have, or what are you getting?
I'd say it's like maybe half the time they give you the number that they have it listed at, but
Okay.
like a lot of times they have like some fluff numbers that they just they list at 450,000, but
Mhm.
they take 400,000, and they're just trying to have some negotiation room. So some people will say 450 and like, oh yeah, 450 what I'm listed at. I'd say half of them would go lower than that.
So you are getting them to actually open up on that question then?
Not as much as the next part, but yes.
Okay. Yeah. Because I haven't had them open up as much there as I have on this 6 and 7. Number 6, we're talking about, as a professional agent, I study homes and prices every day, therefore I assume you'll list with me at a price that will cause your home to sell. This one kind of establishes your credibility. You know, this is what I do every single day. This is what I study. And then I'll go into number 7, so what price won't you go below? I find that I get more of a correct answer here than I do on the first one.
Sure.
Okay, so, but you're still getting good answers on that first
I'd
one?
say get some kind of, like, it starts to open them up with that first question, but then you get, like, probably the bare minimum on the multiplier price when you go below.
Mm-hmm.
Also another question, because some people just don't want to give you a lower dollar amount on that.
They
Like,
don't, yeah.
and
Right.
so they're just like, well, 450. You know, like,
Yeah.
if they told you 450 and they're saying 450 again, and I'll just say, okay, well, how much do you need to walk away with? Like, you know what I mean? Like, then they,
Mhm.
like, because they have a dollar amount, it's like the way that their mind works. It's like, okay, well, I really want to walk away with 100,000, so that means they sell it at 410. So, you know what I mean? So
Right.
that might open up in case they give you even more resistance on that number 7 question.
Perfect, I like that. What about you guys? What do you guys do? You guys ask that? Taylor, do you ask that?
Yeah.
Do you find that were you getting the right answers, or are you not getting?
No, same as Matt. Like, you get them a little bit open up on 5, but on 6, it's another way of asking, so they seem to open up more.
Mhm.
But and it's the same thing as Matt said earlier, but I always think it's funny if they're asking 450, then you start to talk to them and they're like, well, I know we're kind of high, but we just need to walk away with 410.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Like,
Yeah.
why don't we just start there, buddy?
Yeah. No, great question. A couple of them that I've thrown in here, not every single time, but I found that if they're being hesitant with it, I'll just actually throw out a price and say, so would you take a cash offer at 300? Oh no, I wouldn't take that. Would you do a cash offer at 350? No, I wouldn't do that. Okay, where would you do it? Where's your? And I'll try to narrow them down as close as I can, and eventually they'll get to a point where they're just like, you know, yeah, somewhere around 4. Yeah, I'd probably accept a 4. And when I know that that's where their line is, then I can stop.
When you're, I think it's important when you start asking more and more questions, though, like, they may feel like you're trying to get them to come down on their price, right? And you don't even
Mhm.
know
Yeah.
really where their equity, where their home's worth at this point,
Yeah.
you know? So if I have to ask a lot of questions, I'll usually just sneak in, like, hey, my job's to get you as much money as possible out of this home. That being said, and then, like, you know,
Yeah.
that way it's like you're not just trying to get them to come down on price, you're just trying to have a conversation.
Yeah, and I actually like it because then
Exactly.
you can actually add in there, how did you determine the value or the price on the home right now? And then they'll actually tell you, well, I know our neighbor just sold their home. You can actually
Mhm.
do some research if there's homes that have sold in the market, but if you have them say it, like, oh, well, my neighbor just sold their home, we know what the home is worth, and they'll start telling you, they'll actually give you the objection right there. If you tell them saying, so how did you determine the value or the price on the home right now?
Yeah.
Oh, well, my neighbor just sold a home down the street. They sold it for 450, so we're gonna list ours at the same. So then you can actually maybe do some research before you go out there, saying what's actually sold.
Yeah, and finding out that information gives
Yeah.
you an opportunity to pull up that other home and realize it sold 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's changed.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, awesome. Any other thoughts on pricing? A lot of these questions, Matt, you bring up a really good point. A lot of these questions, you're not really wanting to drill them down on something. You're not really, you're just trying to get enough information from them that you can prepare your presentation, is really what it comes down to. So if they're giving you a lot of pushback on, this pricing, and then how much do you own the property, if they're giving you a lot of pushback on it, it's not something that you need to just drill them down on it, but you want to have this conversation with them. You want to bring it up. So, number 9, have you ever thought about selling yourself? I have eliminated that when I'm talking for sub-by owners. But why would I want to know that?
You want to know if you're going to be coming up against that objection in the presentation.
Yeah, you want to know if you're going to come up against that objection. And remember when we talked about the keys to a great presentation, one of them is we have to reduce risks. Okay? In order for them to work with you, you have to reduce the risk. And this is one of the questions that is going to be the risk question. Is it more risky to work with you versus just doing it on my own? That's a risk question that we have to answer for them. So if they have, we want to find out if that's even a thought, because you'll have some people that will come out and be like, no, I don't have time for that. I'm going to interview agents. And then others ones might hesitate on it. At that point, just prepare your presentation for reducing the risk of that. Will you help finance your home for a buyer, or do you want your cash out? Is seller financing a good thing right now for a homeowner?
Depends on the situation.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So like, I had a guy who had a distressed property, and like he had to sell it to a flipper,
Mhm.
and he got more money by doing a 3-month seller financing transaction with it. And instead of having to pay out hard money, so he got like 10 grand more than he would have if he didn't do the seller finance. So I think it just depends on the situation.
Yeah.
Carry a long term? No, I don't think so in today's market, but it may in a scenario like that.
It just depends also, if it's a home that they don't absolutely have to sell, they can make a lot of money off the seller financing as well. Like the interest or the down payments, that's non-refundable if they don't follow through, or even a lease option to purchase, but you won't know that unless you ask that question.
Yeah.
Right, some
So-
people want to do lease options or seller financing, or even renting a property. It shows intention that you care about what they want to do.
Right.
So in Matt's case, the buyer just had a short-term issue, and the seller finance got them through that. You said it was 3 months?
Is that,
Yeah.
is that what the issue was?
Yeah, it was just they just needed short-term financing so they could fix it up and flip it,
Mhm.
and they'd have to take out hard money, so they'd have to pay the points up front, and they gave that same amount of money
Yeah.
they would have paid in points to my client.
That's perfect. And the key to that one though is take some time and just learn it. Like if you don't know what it's about, you can't teach somebody something you don't know. So take a second and say, okay, is this better for them? You know, if you go into a situation and you say, okay, this is, you know, I can buy the property, I can help you sell it finance, I want to help you through this problem, then all of a sudden it opens up the doors of them feeling like you're not trying to corner me into a one scenario, you're opening up the doors to a lot of different possibilities. So it might not be something they want to explore, but just the fact that you're bringing up something else in the presentation, I'm not saying bring it up now, even if they ask you questions, don't bring it up. Like, great, we'll talk about that in the presentation. Just wondering if you're open to it right at the moment. Don't dive into these questions and start answering them, which is going to be the tendency because they're going to ask more questions about it. Just acknowledge the fact that they answered it and then write it down, and that's your presentation.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point, because the other day I was practicing with somebody, and they asked me the seller financing question. I'm like, well, what's that? And they're like, I don't really know. I'm like, okay, if you're going to be asking that question, you better know a little bit about this. You know what I mean? So you could be in the pre-qual. That's why this is important here, though. In the pre-qual, they could say, well, I don't know about that. I'm like, okay, great, we can talk about that in the appointment. Or they could ask a question about it, and you're like, perfect, I'll do some homework, or I'll be prepared to talk to you about that when I come out tomorrow. You know?
Yeah.
And then you do the homework in the meantime, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a great point. But do the homework.
Yeah, do the homework.
Yeah. And a lot of times, if you don't understand it, we're not asking this question, and every one of these questions has a reason for it. So then, number 11, would you please describe your home for me? We've talked a lot about this one in the past about the importance of this question. This one is the one that will bring out the personality types the most out of all of them. Why is knowing the personality type important right now in the presentation? Why is that? Why is that important?
This helps which way you want to take your presentation.
Okay.
Helps.
It increases your
Direction.
success rate by 20% everything.
Okay, it increases your
So it's
success rate.
proven. So if you know the personality style of your client, you will more than likely have more success than you would if you didn't. Just in the sense of you know who you need to be for that person.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like it. Yeah. So that's why we want to figure that out. So what should we look for in that? If we're looking for them describing their home, how do we know?
I like what Lindsay says. You know, it's really easy to eliminate 2 personality styles, and so like when you ask that question, it's gonna open them up to like what they say or the way they say it, how
Mhm.
long that description is gonna basically eliminate 2 personality styles right off the bat. And so I'm gonna be honest, like I wouldn't say 100% of the time I get off this pre-qualification, I'm like, for sure.
They are this.
Yeah, but like
Mhm.
the appointment I have today, like I know he's either like analytical driver or driver analytical. Like it's like one of those two. And so at least I don't need to like
Come in feely.
worry about the amiable and
Mhm.
the expressive. I just need to focus on the numbers and getting him the information he needs.
Yeah. The only thing would be is unless you pre-qualify both parties, just make sure you have some amiable questions and expressive questions, because there's a lot of times where a analytical driver will be married to a expressive amiable. It's yeah. So just be careful with that. And I would just have a couple questions that pertain to both of them.
Jason, just on that point too,
Mhm.
like if you have pre-qualified one or the other, like why not ask, hey, is it okay if I call back and speak to your wife? So that you make sure that I'm covering everything that's important to her, or,
Mhm.
right? Because then you have the opportunity to pre-qual that person too.
Yeah, and you might just find out that the other person is the one that's going to make the decision anyway.
Right.
So, yeah, that's a great point. So, don't be afraid that when we look at this, sometimes we try to put our business into like compartments, and we're like, okay, this is the time I'm setting the appointment, and this is the time I'm doing my pre-qual, and this is the time I'm doing my presentation. The minute you first talk to them, you have to treat them like this is your client and you're working for their best interest in mind. And if they can feel that from the beginning all the way through it, then the signing, there's not going to be challenges with it. They're going to feel that you have their best interest in mind. So we hesitate with this pre-qualification because, one, we don't want them to say no to us. We don't want them to say, well, I'm not going to talk to you. But at the same time, are we really helping them by not asking these questions? And that's the different mindset that we've got to get into. Is the pre-qualification, yes, helps us to determine what they need, but ultimately helps them feel comfortable with what we're doing. And that's so important for them to want to work with us. So whether we lose some or we don't, asking the questions means committed to saying, I'm here for you, I want to take care of you, therefore that's why I'm asking these questions. We're like the only industry that doesn't like to pre-qualify our clients. We like to just work with them without knowing anything. And we also are an industry where people make decisions rather quickly without really digging into, is this the best thing for me? Which is so funny because it's like they're the highest purchase that most people make, but most, like, they just don't give it enough time to really figure out, is this the best agent for me? So you have to be careful with that, but that's why this is so important. Any other thoughts on that? There's a couple more questions, but we're going to end.
On that is, one, it not only helps you, help them, and them being felt like you're actually helping them.
Mm-hmm.
The pre-qual is a big part to you, whether or not you're wasting time.
Yeah.
Like, why would you go out on that appointment if you haven't pre-qual? A lot of the times people won't even be there, right? Like people aren't even gonna show up. Then you'll go out and both parties aren't there, right? And you should be making sure that both parties are there on your presentation every single time. And I was just talking to Ken the other day, is I had an agent come in and I sat down with him, and guess what? I immediately knew by our conversation I didn't pre-qual him
Mm-hmm.
because it was a waste of my time and his. So don't waste their time either.
Yeah.
Like if the other part of this pre-qual and asking them, right, like how much they want for the home, if you know they're unreasonable and you know there's no chance of selling them on it, right,
Mhm.
you've already, like, you're saving their time too. Or let the other agent work with them. Just recently I had an experience and pre-qualed, it was that buyer presentation that I told you guys about last week. Pre-qualed, had her hair, I knew the minute she was sitting in front of me that it wasn't gonna work,
Mm-hmm.
right? Led her in the right direction. Next day, me and Phil get a message, I've chosen another agent to work with. Cause I sat down with her and showed her expectations were unrealistic in Conroe Heights.
Yeah.
You're not gonna find a duplex for the price you're wanting. It's unreal, right? But even after showing her that, and not, obviously I did it in a nice way, right? I showed her them less and things like that myself, but after showing her that, it was, oh, well then I'm gonna go work with this person because they're gonna tell me that I can get that when I really can't. Well,
Yeah.
then go work with them. I don't wanna waste my holidays, to be honest with you.
It's just building standards for your business, honestly.
Yeah,
Like,
it really is.
wasting time, wasting 3-4 hours when you could be honestly prospecting or doing other things. If you don't pre-qual, then you're wasting your time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I just, like, anybody who's like not considering doing this, I just, in case there's anybody in the room, I just want to like put a warning out there. When I did it pre-qual well enough, like I actually hated this business. Like when I go out to an appointment and I didn't have a well pre-qualified appointment, it would be, I mean your presentation doesn't go the way you want it to. It's hard to follow your presentation correctly when it's not a qualified appointment. And I've heard this all the time, and I just have to strongly disagree with it when people say, oh, it doesn't really matter if it's a well-qualified appointment, you need to practice, go to that appointment anyways. And it's like, I don't want to be rude, but I just think that's totally garbage, because it's so hard to present to somebody when it's not a qualified appointment.
Yeah, and then you come away from that presentation thinking that your skills aren't there, or I mean, that's why when I started here, I said this is such a big thing that messes with our mind. Whether you go out there I hear that all the time with brand new agents. Well, I'm just going to go out and get experience. In fact, I talked to one yesterday that he was trying to do deals up in, Tremont area, far away, and I'm like, why would you drive all the way up there to do a deal? Well, there's plenty of deals around here. And the answer was, well, I'm a new agent, I'll take anything I can get. And I'm thinking, that's the problem. That's why we're going to stay as a new agent, because you're going to spend that much time driving up there. It's not going to work out.
Yeah.
And now we have 6 hours of bad mindset. You come back here and try to do business around here, and it doesn't work. And you're like, well, I need to go further out. So it's something that we have to look at as new agents. We want to expand, and I'm just going to do all this stuff. I'm going to take everything I can. The faster you can get it in your own mind, that you shrink that down and you focus on just getting the business that you need, the faster you're going to succeed. Okay? So take this seriously. Memorize it. Learn it. Practice it over and over and over. Get good at this so that what Matt was saying, you can be excited about doing the business, because you don't get excited about the business when your mindset's not there.
Right.
And when you spend 5 hours working on your mindset and then you have one experience that just ruins that whole thing, this business is not fun. So, okay? Any last thoughts? We'll end with some affirmations. Okay, make it a good rest of the week. Good, how are you? Good, how are you? Let's do,
George yesterday?
Huh?
Talked to George yesterday?
Okay.
You're like, what are you talking
I
about?
want to see how you're done.
all right, here we go.
I see
My
that.
goal, I like talking to new people. I know it's important to me. I remember people's names. I have days when I follow. I pass out those days. I know it's just my greatest tool. I like asking questions and listening. I enjoy reading to improve my self skills. My thoughts and my words and action goals. I focus on my great days. My presentation is power persuasive. I improve my skills daily. I am happy. I love the prospect of defeating my vision. I see my future is awesome. I love my life. I am grateful and thankful. I control my thinking. I believe. I love things. I use my leadership options. I get things done. I provide excellent customer service. I drink water daily. I connect with people. People love me. I love others. I am disciplined account of my daily schedule. I prospect daily. I set appointments daily. I'm a master trader. I achieve my goals. I run a day rock star. I time out my life. I live every day purpose. I'm positive myself here. I know my destiny. I am healthy and strong. I'm powerful. I'm unstoppable. I keep on excited.